This is the best tender and flaky pie crust that I have ever used in my life. I'm going to share it with you today. You're going to love it. It can be used for any type of pie that is a flour or dough pie shell. Today I'm going to make it because I'm also going to make a pecan pie, and that's going to be a second video behind this one. So if you want to watch it, go here and you'll be able to get the recipe for my pecan pie. Welcome to K&D's Homestead. I'm Donna. It's raining today. I can't go out in the garden. I can't do anything, so I'm going to make a pie. I have been craving a pecan pie for about a week. So I'm going to make that today. It's going to be 2 videos because I also have to make the pie crust to go with it. So the first video is my pie crust. It's called 101-year-old flaky pie crust. How old it is, I don't know, but I've had it probably for 40 years myself using it, and I don't remember where I got it from. But I'm going to share that recipe with you today, and I promise you will love it. Tender and flaky. So let's get started. I'm going to read off the recipe first before I start doing the ingredients, just so you get an idea of what goes in it, and I will write the recipe down in the description below. It calls for 2.5 cups of sifted all-purpose flour. That means you sift it before you pour it into the bowl. 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 cup of shortening. Now remember, your shortening should always be refrigerated. It needs to be chilled in order to work well in a recipe that you are baking something. Now if you're going to use shortening, in this case I'm going to use Crisco, and you're going to fry with it, that's not a big deal. But just for good measure, I always keep all of my shortening in the refrigerator. In fact, the ingredients for this pie all need to be chilled. But remember to keep your shortening in the refrigerator. So it's 1 cup of shortening, 1 egg, and that egg needs to be room temperature. 1 tablespoon of distilled white vinegar. And you're going to have on hand about 1.5 cups of ice water. You're not going to use all of that water, possibly, you might, but that's the amount we're just going to have on hand for adding to the mixture. So let me bring you in. I've gotten most of my ingredients already ready. Okay, I'm going to be mostly out of the video so that you'll be able to see what I'm doing. We're going to start with 2.5 cups of sifted all-purpose flour. I'm just going to use this rather than the sifter that you grind and sift. I'm going to use this right here. Now, in case you don't know, many people do, when you measure your flour, you never dig down and pack that flour into your measuring cup. You're going to use a separate cup and you're just going to pour it in, and then you're going to cut this in, and you're going to kind of clean it off with a knife to get a flat, uniform measurement. You do not want your flour to be packed. Now I'm going to take that 1 cup, 1 of 2.5, and I'm going to pour it into this little, I'm going to call it a sifter, and I'm just going to shake it back and forth until all the flour is in my bowl. I do have one of those sifters, but since I put the kitchen together, I really don't know where it's at, so I'm just going to use this. I'm on my 2nd cup, so it's just going in light and fluffy. And now I'm going to cut it in. This is not packing it, it's just pushing a little down to possibly get out any air pockets. You do not want to pack your flour because whatever you're making can end up too dense. This is the way that you measure flour, or things that are fluffy like this. You would do the same with cornmeal. So now I'm going to pour this in here. You don't have to do it with sugar. You can, you know, just dig down and get your sugar. That was my second cup. I'm going to shake this in here, and it's sifting as good as it's going to sift. All right, that's all of that. Need to grab a half measure cup. And this is the half. By the way, this recipe will make 2 regular size pie shells or 1 deep dish. You can double it if you're going to make more pies. You just adjust your recipe according to what you need. All right, that's the half, so that equals 2.5 cups of flour. And it is all-purpose flour. A half teaspoon of salt. I've already measured out my shortening, and this is 1 cup of shortening. I'm using Crisco, and we're going to just dump this in here. And by the way, when you measure Crisco, in case you didn't know, plenty of people do know this, you pack your shortening just like you would your brown sugar. So a solid like this will need to be packed into the cup to get the proper measurement. So I'm going to just take this flour, the salt is in here. Let me grab this for a second and swish that salt around so that it wasn't all concentrated in one area. We're just going to mash this. I'm using a fork. Mash this around into the flour. You can use your hands if you want to, and just kind of smear it into the flour till you have a uniform mixture and the Crisco and the flour becomes just little pea-sized particles. Just kind of blended really well. I use a fork because, let me clean this off, it squeezes in between the tines, I think that's what it's called. The tines on the fork. The Crisco will squeeze in there and mix the flour pretty good. This is a dough blender, and you can do it with this as well. I don't always like the results, but I'll try it this time. It might be a little faster. It has a little thumb hold here, although I don't use it well. You don't want large chunks of the Crisco. You want it blended into just little small pieces. This is what's going to help with the pie shell being flaky. Those little pea-sized particles, as long as you don't make them too small, when it cooks, that Crisco is going to make the dough pop a little bit, and it's going to peel back, along with having chilled ingredients. That's a secret to a good pie shell, is your ingredients need to be chilled. check this. Making sure that I don't have any super large particles. If I see any, I'm just going to mash them up. I don't know if you can see this, but it's just marbly, if that's a word. Marbled. Maybe that was a better choice. Okay. So we're going to use 1 egg, and we're going to lightly beat that egg. We're not going to put it in this mixture yet. Get these out of the way. I'm going to put it in here. I've already measured or got my egg cracked, and I'm just going to lightly beat. I should have used something a little less. I'm just going to hand beat this egg. Okay. I'm going to add my vinegar, which I've already got measured out in this little bowl. And it's 1 tablespoon of vinegar. I'm going to pour that vinegar in there. And then I'm going to fill this to 1.5 cups of ice water. I'm just going to get that out of the fridge, off the fridge door. And I'm going to bring this up. We're not going to add 1.5. Let me come over here. We're not going to add 1.5 cups. We're going to bring this up to 1.5 cups in chilled water. Okay, so we had the egg, we had the vinegar, and I brought this up to 1.5 cups of chilled water, ice water. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just enough of this liquid to hold the dough together. I'm not necessarily going to use all of this. I'm just going to use enough to form the ball that I need to roll out. I'm going to get me some flour to just have on hand, and I'm going to leave it sitting right there so I can sprinkle it on the counter and roll out my dough. So I just want this dough to get moistened thoroughly, but not runny. Okay, it is nice and wet, but not runny in the container. Now this can be reserved and set aside in case you need to make another pie shell. I think I'm going to be good though. So I'm going to sprinkle my counter with flour, and I'm going to put some on my rolling pin. Really, I put a bit much. I'm going to flour my pan, and I'm going to pour this out, scoop, scrape, and get it out of the bowl, all into one good clump. I'm going to flour my hands. You want the dough to be not dry, but just not sticky, so that you can roll it out. So if you have to keep patting your hands or patting the dough, keep it from being sticky, then that's what you need to do. Now before I roll it, I'm going to sprinkle some more flour, because when it's time to get it up and put it in the pan, I do not want that sticking. And if you keep your hands, your counter, or whatever surface that you're rolling it out on, you keep it powdered with flour, then it should not stick. Keep the rolling pin floured really good. And you just roll it out as big as you need to for your pie pan. I'm going to use a deep dish pie plate. So I'm just going to set it right there and make an imprint. And then I'm going to go about an inch outside of that and just cut. You don't really have to do this. You can pick the whole thing up and lay it in your pie plate. Now I'm just going to take a tiny squirt of Pam and just give a very light coating of some Pam in my dish. It does not take much. And I'm going to get a spatula to try to scoop this up. Then I'm going to put it in my pie dish. I probably should have trimmed it a little bit longer. This dish is a little bit bigger than I had it in my mind. You can spread it just a little, but you have to be careful when spreading your pastry to not tear it. You can spread it towards the sides. If you don't have a good lip around the sides, when it cooks it will draw up and you will end up with a little shortage on one side. Around here, my people don't care. They just want to eat the pie. But I'm a stickler, so I like for my edge to be still intact. But I did make it just a little bit short. You can always add a tiny little bit. I think that I might do that. Dough is so easy to work with. You can piece it together and nobody will ever know. And I'm just going to take a sharp knife and I'm going to go around and trim against the edge of my pie dish. So there we have it. And a lot of people like to put fancy crimps on their pastry. I don't always do it, but I'm doing it for this particular video. Somewhere I've got a tool that you just roll around and it makes the crimps. But again, not sure where that's at. For anybody that has not seen, we just recently went through a complete kitchen remodel, and I don't have everything unboxed yet. So there is the homemade pie shell. So there is the homemade pie shell. And I promise it's going to be delicious. Now you can use this to make an apple pie, whatever kind of pie you want. But on the next video, I'm going to be making a pecan pie in this pie shell. And if you will stay with me and follow that video, I'm going to put it right here so you can click on it. And I will share that recipe. It's going to be a delicious recipe I have used for 40 plus years now. And it is a no runny pecan pie. If you've ever had pecan pie and it was runny, you know what I'm talking about. So I hope you enjoyed this video. As you can see, the ingredients, it's not that many ingredients. The most important thing is have your ingredients chilled, that being your vinegar, your shortening, and your water. The egg needs to be room temperature, but anyways, it's not that many ingredients. You've got your flour, your salt, your shortening, an egg, white vinegar, and ice water. And it doesn't take that long to roll this out and make it. You will love it. If you've never done it before, make your own pie shell. Whether you use my recipe or your recipe or anybody else's recipe, learn to make your own pie shells, because you will love that versus those frozen shells that are often broken once you open them and try to use them. So anyways, I hope you liked this video. I hope you will subscribe and click the like button. Help me out with sharing the video, getting it seen. And until the next time, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.